Welcome to our fourth session about microphones. This is a bit of an exciting one. We've been building up to this stage where we're going to be talking about how you can take a XLR format microphone, which is the typical microphone used by musicians and orators in a auditorium type environment. And how do you work with these microphones to bring them into the Zoom experience? So let's get to it. Well, here we have really the standard of XLR microphones, that being the SM58. There's no question about it. This is a robust microphone. I've mentioned it several times before. You'll find them in every hotel room in North America. I've actually seen some of these where they've been dropped, you know, that top section here. I've seen it crushed in half, and yet the microphone still keeps on going. And so it's a good microphone, but we're going to be talking about how that microphone gets connected to an audio system. And fundamentally, the connector is called an XLR format connector. And so we would put this into our stereo, and we would put this connector onto the microphone itself. And you'll notice that it snaps in place. It's got a catch to make sure you've got a good, crisp connection for the microphone. Now, I carry with me all kinds of XLR format cables. Anyone that does audio, what's our motto? You know, you just don't have enough of these cables. There's just never enough. And also, often the connections within these cables, depending on the quality of the cable, depending on the amount of money spent on it, depending on where it came from, depending upon how it's made, sometimes these cables have a good, strong longevity, sometimes not so good. And I haven't met a DJ, I haven't met a musician that doesn't have the same attitude. If you have any type of problems with a cable, any kind of crackling sound, nobody repairs the cables. They they turf them and they buy another one. None of us have any mercy about the cables. Either they work or they don't work. If they work, that's good. If they don't work, get them out of your collection of materials, because you just don't want to be dependent on a dodgy cable. So that's all well and fine, but how does that relate to Zoom? Well, I want to introduce to you this wonderful little tool. It's called Behringer. This is a German-made device, and I just want to point out to you, this will receive this end of an XLR cable. And if you look at the back, there it is, a USB connector. So this little device is the glue. Now, this is not the only device in the world. There are many of them out there. I have settled on this one. I like it, but I'm not saying this is the only one in the world. I'm not saying that at all. But if you are really interested in getting the quality of a studio mic into your Zoom experience, this is the guy. There's no question about it. And you'll notice that at the top, it has beautiful gain control. So you can increase the power to, in terms of the signal for the microphone, and, versus the overall output. So in many ways, this is a step-up device and will do a fantastic job. I give you my personal testimony of gluing your XLR format microphone to USB into your computer or laptop, and you're off to the races using XLR format microphone with Zoom. That's all really you have to worry about, this one little device which will glue everything together. So there's my little secret tip to you of how you can bring in your microphone that you have into your PC. So when we talk about microphones, we've been talking a lot about wired microphones, but we should spend a little bit of time talking about wireless because a lot of people like them. There's no question about them. A lot of people find that there's truly great applications for them. And I'm always of mixed feelings about wireless microphones. They have their place. They have their moment in the sun, but I'm quite wary of them for a whole variety of reasons, one of which is battery power, proximity of people to line of sight. I mean, I was at one event and I was just horrified to see that the DJ, he was so proud, he didn't have to run any cables because he had wireless speakers, which is all well and fine until someone walked in front of one of his speakers and you could hear the crackling sound because, of course, people are made up of water and water interferes with radio frequencies. And that's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with wireless. So one of the key things you need to think about is what I call line of sight. There has to be a clear, unobstructed pathway for the signal to pass between the person doing the speaking and the receiver. We'll talk about that in a minute. So these are things to think about. Now remember that if it's wireless, it's a condenser mic, it's got built-in electronics, and it is hypersensitive. It is hypersensitive, so be very, very cautious of that. Now, the best, I wouldn't say the absolute best, but what I'm going to say is that the best value I've identified so far is it's from the Shure company, and this is what is called an SM58. Very distracting because they're using the same model number that they use for their XLR wired microphone. But this is a wireless version, and I'm not sure why they call it an SM58, but this guy is really robust. It picks up signals from distances that astonish me, and it's just a good product. You know, you unscrew the bottom part here, you put the batteries in, and it has a long life. I've seen them run for 3-4 hours without need of changing batteries. So, you know, and this is an on-off button, so you're in control as a speaker. But let's just break this down a little bit because this, you have to think of this as a transmitter. This is a transmitter. This is the receiver. And if you look at the back of these receivers, you will see there we are. We have an XLR cable. So just think about what we're talking about here. If you have that bridging device, now we can talk about bringing into Zoom a wireless microphone. The possibilities really are quite phenomenal now. So once you have the bridging device, then you can literally connect the receiver into the communications device, and from there, USB directly into your laptop. Quite exciting. So, you know, and you know, you wonder what this connector is. That's where you attach an antenna, and you can, instead of using an XLR format, there is some microphone cables that use the 1/4 inch connector. It's okay. A lot of people like them. I can't criticize them, but my observation is the cable, the propensity for something to be broken inside the cable within a 1/4 inch is much higher than it is with an XLR format. But both essentially work very well. You'll notice that this one is called balanced and this one is called unbalanced, and that's a factor. And you know, the more things that you can do to get a good clean signal, the better you are. So here we are. This is the handheld version of a wireless microphone. And now we can move and talk a little bit about wireless lapel microphones. These can be very nice, very professional appearance for the speaker. It's a condenser mic, they're hypersensitive. And you have to learn a new discipline as a speaker. What's the discipline you have to learn? You cannot move your head, because once you have the lapel mic in place, it's in place. And if you move your voice box away from the lavalier, it will have a quiet effect for your audience. And so one of the things you have to learn if you have a lapel mic is that you turn with your shoulders. You're not turning with your head, you're turning with your shoulders, keeping your voice box in the same location. So that's one thing to think of. I've seen an individual who has one of these mics. He had it on a jacket, and for whatever reason, the fabric was loose enough that it was, every time he moved, the microphone was moving subtly, and there was a scratching sound. It just shows you how hypersensitive these microphones are. So something to think about. They're certainly not suitable for outdoor conditions. Now, along with a lavalier mic, a lapel mic, another choice is a headset. And I really like these in that they give freedom of movement to the speaker. They're not terribly distracting for the audience. Some versions are very robust. This is a version offered by Shure that's meant for, you know, joggers, for yoga, fitness instructors. And so it's quite robust. Always have a sock on the microphone, and the microphone, there's a wire that connects it to, this is the transmitter. And one of the things that one has to remember when doing a presentation with a headset or a lavalier mic, because a lavalier will tie into the same device's transmitter, is that now you have to have strategies on how you are going to wear this transmitter. Now, if you're a gentleman, really easy. You got a pocket, so you basically stick the device in your pocket. You run the wire inside your vest or inside your shirt, and then it's easy to have the headset or the lavalier. Not so easy for someone that is not wearing a suit or wearing pants. And if you look at anyone that professionally entertains, what they do is that they actually will have specially sewn clothing in which there's a pocket usually sewn in the back of the dress or the blouse in which this device fits in. And so I find it quite interesting that professional performers will actually have specially tailored clothes to accommodate this transmitter device. And of course, the transmitter works with the receiver, and the receiver is how you tie into your audio system, whatever it is. So here's a good little chart that really illustrates things to think about. This is put out by the folks at Shure Microphone. This is their image and their illustration. And I think it's quite good in that they're recommending placement not on the lapel, but in the center on the tie if you have one. Obviously, it depends on what you're wearing. So remember, if you're going to be using a headset mic or a lapel mic, a lot of thinking has to be done by the communicator about their wardrobe. Is it suitable for using this equipment? So just a suggestion for your consideration. All right. So again, if you're using a lapel mic, I strongly recommend that you have a sock at the end of the microphone. It will stop the popping peas. Here's a really good illustration of placement. And one of the things that you will learn as a communicator when you practice with these devices is that when you have them, and you hear even, a little ringing, the slight reaction of the popping sound, it's very, very easy. You just quietly pull the mic away from your voice box. That's really all you have to do. You can do it on the fly, and you should practice it if you do an audio test before the event that you're doing a presentation at. This is something you can adjust as a communicator, but it requires practice and awareness rather than freezing up and trying to lower your voice to work with the mic. Just pull it out a little bit. And because each person has a different volume of percussion, you know, we use air in different ways. Some people really like the soft spoken word, and they want to hear every word. And I get that. And some people just naturally project and project well. And so it really is up to you to do those fine adjustments yourself in the job of communicating. Remember that when you're dealing with this equipment, audiences absorb sound. Some materials bounce sound, like dry walls. I cannot believe when I go into an auditorium where it's all drywall, the echoing effect that takes place is just amazing. And so work has to be done with the speakers of the audio system to mitigate that problem. You as the communicator are leading the charge in that. Take control of your environment. I talk about this a lot. You know, make sure that the speakers are placed in front of you, not behind you. But you don't want that ringing, you know, feedback problem that occurs from time to time. Taking control means getting there early, testing your equipment, and making sure that the equipment is set for your speaking style and that you have the proper wardrobe to cope with using the, you know, lapel or headset microphones, or maybe you just want to prefer a handheld. Whenever I'm doing a wedding, people ask me, DJs ask me, what do I want? I don't want a microphone stand. I want a wireless handheld. If there's good line of sight, if there's not, if there's water, if there's background noise, I want a wired microphone. So those are the strategies that I employ when I move into an assignment where I take control of my environment. There we are. So here, you know, that's the session today. Really, I wanted to focus on how do you take these XLR microphones and move them into the world of Zoom. And the answer to that question is, this is the glue that glues it all together. Great device. There's others like it, but I can't say enough about this one. But the whole idea is that there's a bridging device between the XLR format and the USB format of your computer. Until our next session, keep working on that sound quality.